Hello and a warm welcome to Property Summits, where you're sure to pick up bags of top tips on how to improve or expand your property business. I'm Emma Birchley, and on hand as ever is our team of hugely knowledgeable experts. First off, we have Tony Gimple, a man with a direct and no-nonsense approach when delivering advice to buy-to-let landlords, investors and developers, whether that's on tax, accountancy or succession planning. Joining me too is Paul Mahoney, best-selling author and serial entrepreneur. He's the founder of Nova Financial Group, providing property investment advice with a particular focus on the buy-to-let sector. Also with me is Richard Bush, who turned a personal interest in crowdfunding and peer-to-peer lending into a professional passion, co-founding Crowdlords, which pools resources to enable more people to benefit from investing in property. And we have Nicholas Wallwork, an investor and developer who makes the most of his expertise in his role as CEO of the world's largest international property forum, providing advice on how to make money through property. John Howard is also here. He's seen it all after more than 40 years in the business, having bought and sold a staggering 3,500 houses, apartments and developments. And our new addition, property investor, YouTuber and mentor, Ranjan Bhattacharya, a man full of top tips on how to succeed in property after 3 decades in the business. Welcome to you all, gentlemen.
Thank you.
So, first off, now, clearly, you all want to make money. We know that, don't we, for sure?
We do.
How can you do that and feel good about yourself at the same time, Tony?
It's turning it on its head. Since COVID, since the Ukraine crisis, there's a new social paradigm. There's a lot of cross-party support for actually doing the right things for the right reasons. Take social housing. Generally speaking, it's got a bad name. It's hard to build, hard to get permissions for, hard to find the funding. But actually, by finding the right properties, getting the right impact investment, taking pressure off the NHS, and it's not so much being inclusive, it's about helping those who can't help themselves, not won't. So take ex-servicemen and women. They get a rough deal. It's always been the same. Take those who have fallen out of the family net. Well, you can do the right thing for the right reasons, bring in huge amounts of family office money, not just from here, but from abroad. You make sure that actually by solving the homelessness issue, which is very easily done, you do get to feel absolutely brilliant about yourselves and make quite a large amount of money, not just for your generation, but going forward. And you're providing yourself and the future, not just with sustainable property, which I'm sure we're going to come on to later, but the next generation of investors, taxpayers if you like, who will want to repeat the process. So yes, you can do both at the same time.
So money to be made sounds tempting. Who here has gone for it?
Good question.
Well, yeah, we rent to a number of displaced people, working with companies that have contracts with the Home Office, helping along those lines. I think, as a landlord, there are longer leases available working with these kind of operators, typically 5 or 6 years, but I have heard of longer. I know Paul and I are discussing another charity-based organisation, isn't it, Paul? We were literally talking about it yesterday.
Yeah, so we're currently trying to source various options there. So one is the Refugee option. There's various providers that provide that, and that's long-term leases for landlords and quite good yields to house refugees, which obviously is a requirement. Another one is a housing for vulnerable women. Yeah. So there's various different needs out there, and there's definitely demand for socially aware investing, as Tony said. I think it's probably easier to raise money if there is a social aspect to your project than if there isn't.
So easier to raise the money. Are there more hoops to jump through?
There are, in that you need to provide a high level, a high standard of housing.
It's higher than you think, isn't it?
It's much higher than you think. So pretty well all of these providers have quite a high standard with regards to both the standards of the housing, but also the locations and ticking the right boxes and all those sorts of things. So there are more hoops, but potentially there's more reward as well.
It's actually higher than probably the open market sales of property, the tenants have a higher level of comfort
Services
and
and
services
amenities,
and so on.
yeah.
And what I would just say, there's a lot of people doing great things at the moment, and there's a lot of do-gooders who like telling everyone what they're doing. There's other people who have been in the property industry many, many years. Ranjan is one, I'm another, and Richard and so on, and there's some younger members here as well.
Were you
And
pointing
at
at
the end
Tony?
of the
Were you
day-
pointing at Tony when you said younger men?
Well-
Members, John?
Sort of, yes, I was actually, wasn't I? I was being rather kind, Tony. And what I would say is there's nothing wrong with making money and having to pay, and of course paying your tax, because it's the tax that we pay that provides the social element funding-wise for these schemes. And I get a little bit sick and tired of people saying, oh, I don't mind paying more tax, I don't mind doing more this, I don't mind doing more that. And the true entrepreneur, and we're all entrepreneurs around here today, we employ indirectly a lot of people. And without us doing so, and we won't do so if the tax becomes any higher than it already is in this country, in my view, then that stops all these other initiatives happening. So the government needs to listen to that and be reducing corporation tax, not increasing it.
John, you're going off the subject a bit. You're going on to your tax.
I don't think he is.
Not really.
I don't think he is. And
Thank
I
you,
think
Ranjan.
if you look, say, Bill Gates, if you want to sign up for Microsoft Windows, you will pay the subscription that anyone else will pay. What he's gone down the route of, and which is what I favour, is actually doing a profitable business and then choosing to direct a percentage of that profits laser targeted at charitable causes that you particularly want to support, that support your ideals. At the moment, with the charitable housing and the social housing, we have some structural problems in the UK. Like when you rent to social housing, you tend to have to do it through a larger group, like a housing association. If you rent directly to someone, say on housing benefit, there's some real problems because the local authorities don't pay all of the rent. There's a top-up amount. It's difficult to get possession.
It's messy,
rent arrears.
Ranjan, isn't it?
So whereas in other countries like the States, it's very, very easy to do what they call Section 14 housing over there. The ways of getting those top-ups are it's on the landlord's side. Whereas in the UK, you do have to go through these larger umbrella groups, and they're usually set up around particular causes and themes. Like now there's a whole bunch set up around the Ukraine crisis. So I think that's one of the problems. So there's nothing wrong with generating your profits and deciding
it's
then
not a
to
crime.
later
Yeah, no,
target.
it's not a crime.
I agree, but John was making his point about the tax level, which always seems to come up every single subject.
I paid a lot of tax this last year or so, and I'm peeved about it
That's
because
good.
I don't want
That's
it wasted.
because you've made lots of profit.
Well,
But I agree with you. I think one of the questions is whether you do your charitable work, inverted commas, with your profits, or whether you do something that has a social impact, like providing housing for. And the challenge that we've always found is finding the organisations and opening a conversation with them. So how is it best to go about finding them, Tony?
What is truth, said Pilate. I mean, there is no right answer. Whether you're doing it from profit or whether you're making your profit from the good work is down to you as an individual. But the big providers are slowly being squeezed out of the market. I'll give you an example. Just started working with an ex-services charity for rehab, PTSD, the works. They've now got all of the funding they need as a specialist care provider. So we're just helping them buy the freehold of their current building. So it's, if you're giving it a tithe, so 10% say out of income profit, or you can have a structure whereby one of your businesses is totally and utterly dedicated to those good works. 100% deductible, you can work with local authorities, you can work with crisis, whoever you want to. You still make money, but bear in mind, one chimney pot, what did that take to build? Look at all the trades, look at all the taxes that paid, the people it employed. And I'm as far from the left as it's possible to get, fully paid up One Nation Tory, Spartan Brexiteer, the works. But that is not mutually exclusive to having some kind of...
That's a good point, Tony. Very good point made.
you can make money, do good, pay the correct amount of tax rate, that which HMRC and government will allow. And the beauty of the English legal and tax system is everything is okay until such time as it's proved not to be. You know? So critical, do your research, do the background, do the deep dive, be careful of the very, very large providers because they're ripping millions
overheads
out of the
must be
system.
massive, Tony, aren't they?
Oh, their overheads are massive,
Yeah.
but then they're making some serious amount of profits as a result and not always doing such a good job. So choose with care. And as I've always asked of people when I talk to them for the first time or forever, whatever they say I want to do, ask them why. And ask yourself, why do I want to do this? If it's just to make money, well, okay, maybe you won't end up doing the right thing for you or anybody else. But if it's to actually build something, almost as a legacy, then you're starting to reach the right reasons. And I've seen people who are evil, mean, wicked and nasty, and not all of them are property developers.
Oh, that's nice to know.
My pleasure, yeah.
Ranjan?
Yeah.
I don't think property developers are.
No, they're not.
Here we are.
They're not,
you know.
yeah.
We're actually in this commercial space
it's
here,
lovely.
this warehouse thingy,
Yeah.
and it's going to be sold. It's up for sale actually. And this is okay. We're using it now, but it doesn't have a use. And this is a lovely spot. It needs a use, and whoever picks this up will be transforming it for a use, and that will be changing people's lives for the better. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. It makes a profit, and then you give something back. The other thing I'd like to sort of come back on, and on kind of doing it in the sort of private sector way, doing philanthropy in the private sector way, is some of these big institutions are just too big, and there are plenty of layers of fat. We have bought several properties off housing associations that have disposed them in London. And I've been flabbergasted when I go into some office and there are 300 people there, and I wonder what the hell are they all doing? And they're meeting after meetings just to sell a few simple houses with 10 people around and fancy biscuits on the table. There's a lot of overhead.
There's a lot of fat
and you
there,
can
isn't
do stuff directly and trim that all out.
Absolutely you can. Yeah.
You talked about long leases, 5-6 years,
Or longer.
even longer. Is that a real lure to this kind of thing?
Definitely. I mean, the lease adds the financeable value to the site. So, you know, if you get something like over a 10-year lease, for example, and there are some operators that we're talking to that do 20, 25-year leases, the longer the lease, the lower the yield you'll need to return the incoming buyer, which means you can sell the property for a higher value. And so that lease attracts the kind of operators like pension funds, you know, people that are operating at an ultra high net worth level, perhaps more commercial grade investors that would then be interested in that as just a, you know, they're just buying an income stream.
I think it's important just to clarify on that. When we say that, we're talking about that from our perspective as developers, you know, on a bit of a larger scale. Whereas if individuals are looking to do these things, and for example, let one house to one of these associations, sometimes those long leases can be a problem because they can cause issues with finance. Most lenders don't like long leases, especially if they don't have break clauses, because if the landlord stops repaying the mortgage, it makes it difficult for the lender to come in and take the property, to foreclose on the property. So in some cases, I know with some of these providers, you can get, for example, a 5-year lease with a 5-year renewable to make the lenders happy. Whereas if you're doing the whole development and there's 25 units in it, then the longer the lease, the better, really.
I would also point out that, you know, not every one of these organisations has got a strong balance sheet, so you do need to check it out, because I've known a number of them to go bankrupt and you know, the property be offered by auction. So if you think if you're gearing it up on a yield that is very high, high rent, then just be cautious, because you do need to check that they've got the wherewithal to actually pay that rent going forward.
Someone briefly mentioned Ukraine. Obviously, there are lots of people in very difficult situations. They're looking for somewhere to live. Is that opening up a new avenue?
Yes, it is. Look, Ukraine has almost brought back what this country is. It will do the right things at the right time for the right reasons. It will just welcome the world. Government's putting, what, £350 a month for housing Ukrainian refugees. There's going to be a massive rebuilding program in Eastern Europe thereafter. There's an opportunity here to turn this into really good quality housing for not just Ukrainian refugees, but for people who want to be here and contribute to society. I've spoken to a hell of a lot of people from every conceivable background, race, creed, nationality, however you want to call it. And 99% of people who come off that boat, the first thing they ask, where can I get a job? Where can I buy my own property? And they just need the helping hand. And that's what we're good at. You can get tax breaks from it. They feel welcome. They become part of society. And it's one of the few countries where a butcher's boy or an apprentice, or a blacksmith's son can get to the highest offices of state.
Just to put it in perspective in terms of the volumes, one of the companies we're working with in the south of England says they've got over 10,000 people currently in hotels, that's displaced people, and that was before the Ukraine war started, and they are already seeing an influx of people from that. So this is a major national problem. So it's definitely something we as landlords and investors could help with by offering up our properties.
It's interesting with Ukraine because these people coming here, I'm guessing in most cases, don't want to be coming here. They want to be in their own country. You get that real sense, don't you? And that's, I suppose, the difference maybe between a Ukrainian refugee and a Syrian refugee, who often they're coming here seeking a new life because of what's gone on back home. They don't want to go back. Does that change how you go about things?
Yes and no. If we're opening our doors, however people get here, for whatever reason, there's a good chance that not only they will settle here, but if ultimately they do go back to Ukraine or wherever, will make such a lasting impression on their hearts and minds, as the Americans call it, that not only will they always be friends, but more to the point, they'll think, well, it's a good place for their kids to come and be part of the system here.
Do you think it's fair to say that there's been a kind of a shift in the mindset of property investors from however long ago it was, but when the government first started saying you need to set aside this percentage of your development for social housing or whatever, where certainly the sense I've got back then was that it wasn't hugely welcome always?
It's still not.
Well, it's more accepted, isn't it?
It's just part of it.
It's part of it, yeah.
But I think there's a difference between forcing someone to be charitable and encouraging them to be charitable.
Yeah.
Through incentive and that sort of thing. If there's tax reasons to be charitable, more people will be charitable. Whereas if you just say you have to do this, everyone will do everything they can to avoid it.
And
That's
at
very interesting.
At the end of the day, the more social housing requirement on a development, the more difficult it is for the developer to make money.
Yeah, the less viability.
And the less viability. So
Exactly.
at the end of the day,
Because of the
it's a
mi-
bit of a vicious
Right.
circle. That it sounds great that 30% are going to be out of 100 are going to be for social housing, but actually, you can offer sometimes what's called a commuter payment, which is a payment off-site, if you like, for another development to be built, and that quite often is a better way of doing it, I think, than forcing a developer to put social housing on their site.
Does that not inevitably lead to a sense of us and them, different types of people living in different types of property?
I'm not ashamed to say, Emma, that may well be the case in certain cases, but we all want to live in this lovely, fluffy world. The truth is the world isn't like that. We've seen that with Ukraine and I think, in other places. And, the market, as my great friend Paul Mahoney says, is a micro market across the whole UK. So, I mean, you can't always force a social situation. They happen naturally.
I mean, this building's a good example. They said it might be for sale. I'm sure it's probably worth about 10 million or something. This isn't going to be converted to social housing.
No.
you know, this is prime central, well, it's zone 1 London. It would make no sense from a financial perspective for this to end up social housing because the flats will go for millions.
And the other thing with these rules, social housing rules for developers, is that it's a similar kind of rule, but all sites and all development deals are not similar. So it's one thing if you're building 100 apartments, it's quite something else in terms of viability if you're looking at a 12 apartment scheme or a 15 apartment scheme. And then there's, you know, the issues of how much the land values are, the end values, whether it's actually viable to do so. And and when you start looking at, when you get involved in battles with the council regarding viability, then it just becomes it's a very adversarial thing. And because I don't think they see it from a business point of view. They actually seem to view it as though all of it should be social, quite frankly.
So bottom line then, of you all here, who is going into the future thinking you might do more of this?
Absolutely.
Nick and I are looking at doing
Yep.
a decent sized development with it at the moment. So yeah, it's definitely picking up.
I'm looking to make as much money out of my developments as possible in order that Rishi Sunak takes some tax off me and invests it wisely in social housing requirements.
What a glorious spot to stop. So money to be made, you can feel good about yourself at the same time. Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much, gentlemen. And thank you for joining us. Hopefully you've picked up some fantastic tips today. Until next time, goodbye.